Oh, yes, yes, we gotta do that. We'll start. Hafaday, good afternoon. The Committee on Health, Tourism, Military Affairs, and Senior Citizen now convenes this public hearing. Public hearing notices were given to the media. First notice on Wednesday, September 27, 2017. Second notice on Monday, October 2nd, 2017. For the record, today is Wednesday, October 4th, 2017, and the time now is 1:31 p.m. The committee will hear and accept testimonies on Bill 167-34. It's an act to add a new Article 5 to Chapter 9, Title 12, Guam Code Annotated, relative to directing the Guam Visitors Bureau to develop and publish a request for information relative to developing Guam as a home port cruise ship industry. That's the only item on the agenda this afternoon. I'd like to thank Senator Will Castro, a good colleague. Thank you very much, Senator, for being here this afternoon. I also recognize Mr. Monty Mesa, who's very unique, wears very unique positions as a member of the board of Guam Economic Development Authority, as well as the Guam Visitors Bureau. But before I recognize him, I'd like to just speak a little bit about what Bill 167 is about. For the past few years, Guam has invested through the Guam Visitors Bureau a significant amount of resources to the cruise industry, in looking at the cruise industry and seeing how it can be developed on Guam. These were done through membership into the Micronesian Cruise Association, and over the years, we've estimated maybe over $200,000 has been invested in this effort. And so with this year's passage of the FY 2018 fiscal year executive budget, we've kind of took a different approach in allocating the same amount that has been allocated every year to GVB, which is $50,000. And instead of allocating it into membership into the Micronesian Cruise Association, we've allocated into a special program within the Guam Visitors Bureau, which is called the Cruise Industry Home Porting Program, or something similar to that. In discussion with Vice Chairman Monte Mesa, and also with others in the community, most notably Mr. Jerry Perez, who was involved in this for a very long time as well, we've come to the conclusion that the next step really should be an RFI or an eventual RFP into perhaps looking at providing a cruise company, an exclusive license to home port as an option, you know, for the development of this industry on Guam. So this piece of legislation here, it directs the Guam Visitors Bureau to develop and publish a request for information, and really it's similar to what we've done in the previous term with the request for information for the Guam Memorial Hospital Authority, and looking at going into some sort of public-private partnership with a third party. With that request for information, I believe the government received good information from interested companies. Now it's up to the government, the executive branch more particularly, to see how that can be used in moving forward. That's the kind of the same concept we're looking at for this. At the end of this bill calls for a resolution by the GVB board to make that determination. After a request for information, all the information is gathered, whether we should as a community move forward in developing Guam as a home port, or if for some reason it's not feasible, it's not viable, then we should also acknowledge that and, you know, exert our energy into something else. So that's what we have here today. I want to, again, thank you, Mr. Mesa, for your work over the years in really getting us all what we need to make this determination, make this next step into developing Guam as a home port industry. So I'd like to recognize you with your testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Senator Will, for allowing me and allowing the time for the public to come and testify on this bill. First of all, I'd like to commend Senator Rodriguez again for prompting this bill and the intent of the bill to encourage our agencies who are involved in developing new opportunities, as GITA as well as GVB, to include the Port Authority of Guam as well in this particular case, to look and exploring ways that we could, again, enhance our economic activity in our tourism industry. And the next leg that we're looking at and hopeful development is in the cruise industry. Although I appreciate the bill's intent in designating GVB to move this and directing it to put out an RFI, I have consulted, with the members of the GVB as well as GITA. And since we had earlier discussions, two things have happened, significant. One, of course, that the governor appointed the deputy of GITA, Mana Silva Tyron, to head this study and to push this initiative, along with the vice president of GVB, which is Tony Muñe, who he appointed to drive this initiative and move this particular project forward, from the advice that I also spoke with him in pursuing this. Secondly, I appreciate again your efforts, Senator Rodriguez, in allowing the allocation of our Tourist Attraction Fund directly again to GVB to support this initiative. And I like to recognize that, as she mentioned earlier, there was a lot of initial efforts that were put into this program. And yes, we've developed the Micronesian Cruise Association to try to explore this further. However, we saw that all these members are all volunteers and are not paid to do this kind of work, but they laid out the groundwork working with the other islands as well. And we've taken it as far as it can be taken in terms from an association effort. And I'm glad that we wanted to make this a policy direction of our government to look at going after this potential opportunity to develop a regional cruise for the island. One thing that the Micronesian Cruise Association, along with GVB, did was we commissioned a PATA panel of experts to conduct this study. And this is the study that I think also we reflected on as the next step after they've done their study that has been shared with your office and others at GVB and at GITA. And we're looking to see how we could advance this. And I support the intent here to make this a policy direction for our government and ensure that the agencies that are leading this are really committed to get it done. And I've been reassured again by the two members of this administration for GITA as well as GVB that they've started on this. They looked at the information that we had. They were truthful with me that, of course, they don't have the institutional knowledge in the parameters of really setting up a regional cruise, and they need help. And I realized that their knowledge behind what has happened has been transferred to them. They're trying to absorb this to again chart the proper the proper channel and the proper steps to ensure that again we invest the money wisely in approaching this strategy of developing a regional cruise. So I like the committee to consider, again, looking at the bill's intent, but to provide the opportunity for GVB and GITA. This is now a combined effort, which is, I think, it's a great start from this administration to do, and allow them to use the allocation of the budget that you've provided in this new fiscal year to go after this. And there's two schools of thought, and I understand the rationale about putting out the RFI. And that is also a good route to take. However, those are also time-consuming, and we wanted to also look at the possibility of just sending out an RFP, develop an RFP that will entice and give that to specific companies that are really working in this particular regional cruise, expedition-type cruises that will allow the time to respond and also be able to provide the technical information that we need with providing support for GVB and GITA to bring on a consultant to help them put this together. So I would like the committee to consider that, Mr. Chair, and would like to continue the effort, and I appreciate the effort to make this a policy and a direction that we need to go after, and find the final or make the final resolution, as you say, for both GITA as well as GVB to make the determination if this effort is worth investing more money into it.
Great. Again, thank you so much, Mr. Mesa, for your service and your commitment to this effort. I know you're very passionate about it, and you really believe in it, just like I do. Right. You've really got me to believe that this is something that will work and we can do here on Guam. It's just now making sure that we got the infrastructure and everything together. So, as I shared with you, I shared with both GITA and GVB that this legislation, just like the RFI we did for the hospital, really doesn't require a law to do it. It is a clear, it's a call for a clear policy direction that we're saying, let's go out and see. And if this is something really viable for Guam, if not, let's put our eggs in another basket, right? Okay. So I'm very open to the suggestion that both the deputy of GITA and GVB has asked us to consider. The only thing is that I'm hoping that our government could use this RFI tool more often. It's something that we can do with less expenses. Of course, if you do an RFP now to bring on a consultant, I don't know if the $50,000 that we have encumbered, that we've allocated for this specific goal is enough. I don't know. I don't know. I know these could cost a lot more, and we really get what we pay for. This RFI, the expense that we would incur right off the top is perhaps publishing it in some sort of journal or magazine to get these companies that may be interested to respond to some sort of RFI that we put out. So we'll continue to work with you and the two agencies to see what really is the best course of action to take. And I appreciate the efforts that Senator Mana and Tony are making on this. The bottom line here is that this bill calls for a GVB resolution at the end to give us a clear strategic plan on what are we going to do moving forward. And so I think if we can get to that either this way or through the way that GVB and GITA is recommending, then I'm very open to that. So we'll continue to work with you on that.
All right.
Senator Lee, thank you very much for joining us. Senator Castro, did you have any questions? Senator Lee?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Mesa, again for coming to this body in support of these efforts to really think about and develop more fully the cruise ship industry here on Guam. It's my understanding that the PATA task force had submitted a report on cruise development in Micronesia, and they listed several strategic pillars. I think there were 4 or 5 of them. And I wanted to ask you what our status is in regard to this report.
I'm glad you referred to that again, and this is the reason why we wanted to make this a policy direction and encouraged Senator Rodriguez to consider this, is because the report was done last year in 2016, and we've been working on trying to get this industry really explored further. And of course, it wasn't really a clear objective that was put in with the 2020 GVB plan, although it did mention, a cruise industry. That's the reason why I went back being on the board to try to push this initiative, because we had other members who were looking to help this initiative, but they had different interests in terms of what direction of GVB last year was looking to embark on. So this year, the opportunity, and thank you for allowing me to serve in GVB. This is the hope that with this policy direction, the report recommendation that's mentioned in the PATA report is something that we want to try to push together and push it along with the cooperation with GITA, the Guam Port Authority, and as well as GVB, because it takes these three entities to really follow the recommendations made by PATA. So the status of that today, Senator Regina, is, there's no action because there were no charted course yet. And in this particular legislation, I was hoping that it'll be a direction, which it is a direction now, as well from the administration of the governor's office, that put two people in charge of this to follow through with those recommendations made by the PATA report. And to date, again, the answer to your question is that, everything is at a standstill. Today, we hope that this moves it further in the respects that we need to further explore this opportunity.
You may have done this in your oral testimony earlier, but I wanted to just maybe get a picture of the last year and the year before, because it's my understanding that there was a recent year where we had about 12 different cruise ships port here on Guam and had visitors come off of the ships and enjoy all the things that we have to offer here. So I wanted to just, if you could give us numbers for maybe 2016 or 15, 16, and 17 for the numbers of cruise ships that we've had in the past maybe 3 years. Are you aware?
Yes. Let me make the clarification on the two different methods of the cruise industry that we're looking at. The one that we're talking about today is a regional home port cruise industry that we're looking to develop. This means that we are looking to provide opportunity, jobs, also businesses that surround and support the home-ported cruise development. That's one. What you're referring to now is port calls. These are when we invite cruise ships that are cruising around our area to stop and make a port of call. The port of calls to Guam has diminished. We've had maybe last year we had 2, and this is another opportunity that we can still pursue and inviting cruise ships to make port calls. We had some challenges with, of course, the development of the port as it was going through, and it wasn't, necessarily the ideal situation when they were going through the port redevelopment and expansion. Now that that has been completed, at least now we could entertain more port calls as the opportunity arises. But these are two different strategies. What we're looking to develop is this home port for the region, and not only for Guam, but it will include Micronesia.
Right.
And the one that you just referred to about port calls, that's still another opportunity to bring, a significant number of ships here, and that number of ships in the region could be marketed to make a stop, meaning a port call at our docks in the port.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like if we have that infrastructure ready, and then we'll have a greater opportunity to avail ourselves of those different port calls. I just have one additional question. So this bill seems to address Pillar 1 of the PATA Task Force Plan, which is community engagement and collaboration with the Micronesian Islands, as you had discussed. So I think the community will be much more engaged with actual shovel-ready projects. So I wanted to ask you, are there any shovel-ready projects in the works that would get community stakeholders to buy into initiative of this kind?
One of the things that we do have going for us today in entertaining cruise ships, both for home port and port calls. The good thing is we have attractions already set up on island. We have option tours that people can get on. This is something that needs to be further developed because it's also a different set of customers, and the time that the visitors that are coming on a cruise ship is different from people coming on the plane where they're spending here 3 days, 3.5 days. The cruise ship people are spending maybe 8 to 12 hours on a port call. And also for people that are going on a cruise, they either spend 1 day ahead of time coming to the port of call before loading on the ship. So this is an opportunity that we can see going after this industry. But today, we have option tours that are available that could be enhanced to target attracting a specific number of tours to their particular current options. But this is also an opportunity for us to further develop additional tours within some of our villages that would be a specialty, and it'll be limited.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mesa, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm certainly in support of this measure. I signed on as a co-sponsor because I really believe that this is an opportunity for Guam to really not just raise our profile, but really uplift everybody in our region and provide more opportunities for our people and for our brothers and sisters in Micronesia. So again, I want to join Chairman Rodriguez in just thanking you for really stepping out and educating yourself on all of these different opportunities and continually being a stakeholder and bringing that to us, bringing the information to us that we can move forward. So I want to thank you so much, Mr. Mesa, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Castro?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I mentioned, if you recall, Mr. Chair, on the budget session floor, I was making reference to GVB's Strategic Plan 2020. And while I had initial doubts, Mr. Mesa, of this vision that was laid out, I found comfort in the fact that you were referencing some empirical data. And as you could see, there's some new senators here with diversified backgrounds. And I think we've been pushing through our actions the need to diversify this economy because our future depends on it. Now, while we can acknowledge that tourism is a mainstay of the economy, I think it's evident that in a mature, if not declining market of one of those destinations coming to Guam, it's imperative that we do something different. And in this case, the chairman is basically signaling that a third and equal branch of government is supporting the administration and GVB's vision. And that's commendable as well. And frankly, whether it's the cruise line industry or if it's export of product and commodities or it's the fisheries industry, I just really think that a lot of thought has come forth from pioneers in the area like Mr. Jerry Paris, who's been around for a long, long time, and yourself as well. So I find comfort in that. I also wanted to say, Mr. Chairman, and I really don't talk much on session floor on any particular bill, so I might as well say it here so I can be quiet on the session floor. But I am extremely appreciative of the fact that this opportunity to grow Guam's economy is not exclusive to other jurisdictions. And you said it yourself, that it has the potentiality to reach into our regional partners, whether it's the Republic of Palau or the CNMI that I have particular bias to as one Marianas. And so I appreciate that opportunity to grow not just ourselves, but our neighboring island states. And so, Mr. Chairman, I thank you. I do have some hard questions, but what I'll do is I'll confer with the chairman and maybe he can send it back to GVB in the governor's office. But thank you for stepping forward to verbalize your support of the measure.
I wanted to, again, clarify a very important point that Senator Regina, as well as yourself, Senator Will, in terms of this regional cruise. Yes, we are pushing for Guam to be the hub, but to be successful, all the other islands as well need to buy in. We had initial buy-in. There is a, as the bill calls that, even the APIL group, the Island Chief Executive meeting before, now it's called something else. But I know that all the leaders already support this idea. However, everybody keeps waiting for, one interested party to really say, yes, we're going to put skin in the game and really invest in this region. And I like the intent of that bill because this is a different way of thinking. Although, again, we need to look at it in a holistic way and see how best we can manage it. But what I wanted to point out, and I think, Senator Will, you may have experience with this as well as Senator Regina. And one thing I learned through this process also, and I was looking back out at our overall strategic plan for our government in terms of getting federal funding. And I think you're familiar with this, is the SEDS. And this is something that when I was reviewing that under the GIDA report, because GIDA oversees this program, I didn't see anything. I look back from 2011 to last year, and there was nothing added in there in regards to developing the cruise industry or getting federal funds to at least allocate from EDA, funds that would help us drive this initiative. And this is something that I think, and I'm just learning more about, how this SEDS grants are being administered, but it has to be included, and I know it is put together by GIDA and the Bureau of Budget and Statistics. I think you were an administrator at that one point, Senator Will. So I was looking at that and I say, wow, for us to also get federal funding and support to build this industry, that we need to include that, and that's something I would need your help on in terms of getting the agencies to include that in the next update of the sets.
Yeah, can I just speak very briefly about, as a matter of fact, I was looking for the governor's Vision 2020 and the Vision 2065, and you're absolutely correct, Mr. Mesa, that SEDS, though, the optimistic side, Mr. Chairman, and I want to encourage you to reach into the administration. The good thing is that SEDS is updated annually, if not biannually. So I believe it's predicated on a 5-year strategic plan for the territory, and then you get an opportunity to revisit those strategies, and there is a dollar amount associated with that. And that's why I'm not a gambler, Mr. Chairman, but if I had to suggest and weigh in on where the people of Guam should invest their money, it would be on the side of the administration, because the political will is there. And thanks to you and your team, you did the actual research. So I do have great faith in BSP, and I would encourage you to go back and revisit that, because there is a mechanism by which you can reestablish territorial policy and priority.
Right. Thank you. No, yes, I made reference that the port is an important part of this, and it has listed there that the Port Authority of Guam gets supported in its development phase for accommodating continual commerce. But I think it'll be prudent on our part to specify even the development of the regional cruise would be an added value to that sets.
Okay. Mr. Mesa, thank you again for providing your testimony today. We'll continue to work with you, both agencies, and see how we can move this forward in accomplishing what it is we're setting out here, which is really a final determination on if, number one, we're going to move forward. If we're going to move forward, what is needed for us to help provide the resources to start that moving forward. So again, thank you very much, and we'll conclude this public hearing. The time now is 2 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you.